Okay. Um, okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. As always, thank you, Miriam, for somebody asked me today, how often do you do these Ask the Rabbis? I said, however frequently Miriam can get my attention. Not however frequently Miriam reaches out to me, however frequently she successfully gets my attention. So, but thank you. Thank you very much, Miriam, and thank you for being a clearinghouse for many of the questions. And thank you to everyone for submitting questions. There are really a lot of very thoughtful questions submitted tonight. With Hashem's help, I expect to get to all the questions. Some of the questions really are like very much obviously from different sources, but in terms of from my vantage point, repeats. So I'm not going to touch literally every single question, but I hope I will essentially answer every question tonight, God willing. I also just want to take a moment to reflect. Um, there is a fundamental connection between this topic and the time of year. It feels like, it's always good to learn about this stuff. But I do want to mention there's actually a pasuk from one of the Haftorahs associated with this time of year. Tzion b'mishpat tipodea v'shaveh b'tzedakah. That the Zion will be redeemed with righteousness, and those who return will be brought back with tzedakah, which the truth is probably the literal shot in the pasuk probably is tzedakah in terms of also correct conduct, but frequently people cite that as the great merit for Klal Yisrael if we're diligent about tzedakah. So, and that we should be zocheh that diligence about tzedakah should ultimately be a source for bringing the geula, the redemption for Klal Yisrael. So, certainly appropriate to think about in this time of year. Okay, without further ado, just to remind people of how it works, I go through the list of submitted questions first. You're welcome to submit comments in the chat on what we talk about, but I don't plan on going through the chat until I get through the whole list. Please don't call out anything until you're invited to do so at the very end, God willing. Okay, here we go. Which community institutions should a person prioritize? There are two categories for that answer. One is Young Israel Shomrai Emunah, and the other is everything else. No, that was a joke. That was a joke. It's a very important question. I would say that broadly speaking, we can split up the priorities in tzedakah into three categories, very broadly speaking. So one is the mitzvah of helping a person in need. That is a core mitzvah of tzedakah. An individual has a need. And as I'm sure you could understand, the greater sense of need, the greater priority. So one person comes to you and they say they're really trying to make a down payment on a house. Okay, maybe you could be of assistance to them. Maybe, I don't, another person comes to you and they say they don't have any food for supper. I think we could certainly intuitively understand that those two needs are very different. When we talk about a need, this also fits into a question that someone, at least one person, probably more than one person, asked in the submitted questions, which is how do you define need? How do you define need? So the great principle that the Gemara says, based on a pasuk in the Torah, when the Torah talks about the mitzvah tzedakah, is dei machsoro, to fit the person's lacking. So theoretically speaking, a person was a very affluent individual, and they were able to meet this need and meet that need and luxury items. And now, unfortunately, they've fallen on difficult times. And what we would think of as tzedakah needs, they have all the things that we would think of as tzedakah cases. Their only problem is they can no longer pay the monthly lease payment on their sports car. So someone comes to you and says, this person has come on difficult times. Maybe you should help them pay the monthly lease payment on their luxury vehicle. And you say, are you kidding? I should help pay the payment on their luxury vehicle? I could never even imagine driving such a nice car. But conceptually speaking, if for them it's a loss, then day machzoro would fit. For them, it's a loss because they're used to it. And for them, it would fit mitzvah tzedakah. Now that's true, but it fits mitzvah tzedakah, but my priority in helping a person is first the people of a greater level need. So it's not that it's not tzedakah to help this affluent person who's fallen on more difficult times pay their monthly lease. It is tzedakah, but the person who needs help paying their gas bill, there's a much greater priority to pay the person's gas bill. I hope that's making some sense. I should also mention that among like tzedakah needs, we have a much greater priority to help those who are related to us. That's a very high priority in Hilchos Tzedakah to reach out and help relatives. And after relatives, we have a great priority to help people of our own community. So this is all. We could spend the whole time talking about this subject. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about this specific aspect, but that's broadly speaking category one, which is helping people in need. I want to say one more thing about community. When it comes to the high priority of helping our community, that means, and this also fits into some of the questions that people ask later, that means that if someone comes to my door and needs help making medical payments for a real need, and they're a member of the Kemp Mill, Silver Spring, Greater Washington community, you can think about how to draw the line of community, and another person comes to my door with a similar need and they're visiting from Brooklyn, it's not that the person visiting from Brooklyn doesn't deserve my tzedakah, but the person from Silver Spring, I have a greater responsibility to the person from Silver Spring. I hope that's making some sense. There's one very important exception to this, which is causes of Eretz Yisrael. It's discussed in poskim. Is it exactly equivalent to local community? Is it a touch below local community? Is it a touch above local community? But broadly speaking, we're supposed to see Eretz Yisrael causes as being, in some sense, equivalent to local causes. But if you give all of your tzedakah funds to Eretz Yisrael, you're making a mistake. In other words, what would make a lot of sense is to primarily distribute my tzedakah donations to local causes and Israel causes. And what many people advise is even to make it 50-50, to try to make calculations, because fortunately, as we all know, you could give it all, there's so many worthwhile causes. So in terms of primary responsibility, my primary responsibility is A, to my family, B, to my community, and of a similar tier to my community is Israel causes. Okay. So the first of the three categories that we discussed is people in need. There is another category that's definitely significant, which is supporting the study of Torah. So the easiest way to relate to that is supporting Torah institutions. That is an important category. And third, I would say supporting the basic infrastructure of our community. So in all seriousness, that's where a shul would come in. That's where a community mikvah would come in. That's where various chesed organizations, if you didn't feel that they were covered by the distributing of, like I give money to a certain organization like Yad Yehuda, and they distribute to people in need. That's one aspect. So that kind of, you can fulfill the first category with that. But then also you think of an organization like Bikur Cholim, that just, they're doing all kinds of chesed. It's an important organization within our community. I want to say this one more time, and then we're going to move on to the next point. Broadly speaking, individuals in need, supporting the study and teaching of Torah, and supporting community infrastructure. Those three things are more or less of a comparable tier. And when we talk about where, it's my community, and very, very much similar in level to that is needs in Israel. I hope that made some sense. Um, do want to mention, I hope a letter is going to come out maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. We're actually doing something different this year in Shul. I think it's going to be very meaningful. The regulars here in Shul are certainly used to, we make an appeal for Israel-oriented charities on Tisha B'Av. We're going to do something a little bit differently. Mirz Hashem, this year, we as a Shul are going to try to support one specific Israel-based organization this year, Tisha B'Av time. And we're going to encourage people to make donations through the Shul. And then we, in the Shul, will send hopefully a significant sum to this organization. And then Mirz Hashem next year, if we're all still around, if we're not all in Israel already, Mirz Hashem next year will highlight a different Israel-based organization that we can focus on. I think it's meaningful. The organization we're going to focus on this year is an organization called Metiv, M-E-T-I-V. It primarily is focused on helping people in Israel in mental and emotional health, particularly focusing on Chayalim, people impacted by October 7th. Tired dismay, that actually is a very, very relevant cause today. I don't want to take more time to talk about now, but God willing, we'll be sending something out from Bishul. My guess is it'll come out tomorrow, maybe Wednesday. Okay, next question is a far better question that I can answer. How to evaluate the legitimacy, worthiness of a charity. That is really, really hard. Let me make something very clear. You have no obligation to give money to a charity that you're not sure is legit. You have no obligation to do that. There is an idea on Purim specifically called a Poshit Yad Nostim Lo. If a Jew asks you for money on Purim as a charity, you're supposed to give it to them. There is such a concept, which means it doesn't say how much you're supposed to give them, by the way, which means that on some level on Purim we should be giving. If a Jew reaches out to us, we should be giving them something. That is not an obligation year round. So if you're not sure if this person is legitimate, no need to give them. If you're not sure if this institution is legitimate, no need to give them. I'm very grateful to Rabbi Heinemann and the people from the Agudah in Baltimore that so many of us rely on their to certifications, whatever that they give people. They really do research. I think that's really good. Is it foolproof? I'm sure it's not foolproof. Is it something worthy of relying on? I think it's a good resource. I hope I answered that question a little bit. But what I want to say also, I want to emphasize, I tell people that there are halachic principles in charity, and we've spoken about some already, and God willing, we'll speak about more as the evening continues. But I think the proper hashkafa, I think the proper outlook is whatever we're going to give to tzedakah, we should view it as we are God's emissaries to distribute the money that He grants us in the way that we deem fit. Which means that we should certainly, we're responsible to do due diligence, to be confident that the money that we're giving out is being distributed appropriately, because we're going to give it to somebody. And maybe if this person is a charlatan, in a sense, we're taking money away from the next person when you think about it that way. But the other thing, as long as you follow the basic principles that I mentioned at the beginning about the three kind of categories, again, we should be giving to all of them. But as long as you follow the basic principles, I feel there's something to be said for us giving in a way that resonates most for me to give in a way that resonates most with me, for you to give in a way that resonates most with you. I'll just share with you that Um, when people come to my door, what they're really interested in is my check from the Schul's, from the Schul's charity fund. Um, but they're also okay to accept the donations from me personally as well. Um, as many of you know, my wife and I went many years before successfully having children. So when people come to me collecting for fertility organizations, a person having fertility issues, I don't give more from the Schulz Fund because it resonates with me. I feel like I'm your shliach, but I do give more from my personal checking account because it resonates very much with me and my wife because we were there. So I feel like we all have causes that resonate with us more. As long as one is following the broad principles, I think it's not just okay, but I think it's appropriate that we should give in a way that resonates most with that resonates most with us. Okay. Um, okay, I think I hope I answered that question already. Um, exceptionally important question. A person is receiving financial assistance themselves. Do they have an obligation to give tzedakah? It's a really, really important question. Um, it is counterintuitive to say that a person, let's put it this way, a person contacts a tzedakah organization and they say, I need to receive financial assistance. Okay, let's see your budget. So they say, this is what I'm spending on my mortgage. This is what I'm spending on health insurance. This is what I'm spending on groceries. And this is what I spend in my donations to local organizations. So there's clearly something missing there, intuitively speaking. Like I don't understand. People are giving us charity to our organization so that we should give you charity so that you can give charity to another organization. I'm sure you're with me. There's something slightly off in that calculation. Now, there is a Gemara that talks about the rabbis instituted a personal obligation on tzedakah. Personal obligation on tzedakah, the Gemara says, is a third of a shekel. A third of a shekel factors out to something like $6. That's what I saw in one source, at least. So everybody should be giving some tzedakah every year. That's an annual obligation. And there's certainly a mitzvah to give tzedakah on Matanos Levyonim. That is a mitzvah on Purim. It's a relatively small amount to fulfill the mitzvah. Theoretically, if a person has terrible financial difficulty, hopefully they received some assistance on Purim. They could take from that money and give a little bit of assistance to another collection on Purim or the very same collection. But that's a very unique Purim collection. Now, I know what I'm sure some people are thinking. What do you mean we talk about Meiser? We talk about Meiser giving a tenth of one's income to tzedakah. So this is something Rabbi Einer Zichrono Livracha emphasized a lot. There is definitely an idea of Meiser. There are different opinions as to whether Meiser is an obligation or an Eitzah Tova, good advice. So I tell people all the time that when a person is of the practice of giving Meiser or keeps calculations for Meiser, that's wonderful. That's great. They should have in mind they're doing it bli netter. They're not accepting it as an obligation upon themselves. Because I would certainly say if a person needs to be a recipient of community assistance, uh, they should not be giving Meiser if they need to be receiving assistance from the community. That's what I would say. That's what I'd say. There are also other ways to calculate Meiser. I'm happy to discuss with someone offline. Um, most of us, certainly most of us sending kids to school would have a very difficult time giving Meiser in its traditionally defined sense. But on a basic the basic answer to the question, if a person is receiving community assistance, they should not feel bad at all about receiving community assistance. Whatever we all know, that what goes around comes around, and today is who's doing very financially well, might not be doing so well tomorrow. and who's not doing well today might be doing great tomorrow. This is part of God's world as long as we're putting forth our utmost effort. But I would discourage a person community receiving assistance from giving any more than the bare minimum to charity, and I would not define the bare minimum as miser. Okay. Okay, a person posed the question, is there a mitzvah to help a stranger pay for their child's marriage in this day and age? Um, it's a fair question. I think the basic question is the person putting forth effort to meet wedding expenses? Is the person working hard to meet the expenses and just the ends are not meeting? If that's the case, then it's a great mitzvah to help a person pay for their wedding, as long as it's within modest means. If a person turns to you and asks for assistance and they're paying $150,000 for a wedding, I don't think that makes sense. Though it would fit with the Demach Soro context before, if they're a very affluent person who has made very lavish weddings in the past. But even though it would fit with tzedakah, it would be pretty low on the totem pole, to be honest with you, in terms of other needs. Um, I will say that if a person is from a culture that they're not that they were raised in a way that they're really not taught, motivated, inspired to earn a standard living, and they're in a culture that they'll just do whatever they do, and they don't have to put forth great effort to to cover their family's financial needs, and other people will just help. I happen to disagree with the outlook, but I do think it's possible that sometimes that person is a victim of a broader cultural misunderstanding, in my opinion, at least. Um, I think that's a fair statement. But certainly, if a person is doing what they can to cover I mean, and it could be also the person realizes that they work very hard for a living, but they don't have great earning ability. And at this point, to drop everything and go to school, it might even be financially counterproductive. But if a person's trying hard and they're just not meeting it, I would say it's a great mitzvah. If a person's not trying hard, I would not say it's a great mitzvah. And if a person is not being modest in their expenditures for the wedding, I would also wonder exactly what the mitzvah is, unless it's a fulfillment of Dei Machzorah, as we described before. Um, um, there's a related question. I think the gist is, I think I kind of have basically answered it already. Okay, but certainly fair questions. Um, do I have a halachic obligation to give him a shulach coming from out of town? I believe the legitimacy of the story, but do I have a halacha obligation? So if you believe the legitimacy of the story and they're from Israel, I would not say you have a halachic obligation. You do not have an obligation to give every person who comes to your door, even if they're legit. You do not have an obligation for that. Um, I will tell you, I hope you don't think less of me. Um, uh, if I find that they're legit, I give them something from the shul's discretionary fund, but from my own personal, I do not give money to each and every person who comes to my door. I can't afford it. And that's not a statement that they're not worthy of tzedakah. I just, um, now, if it's a person coming from Israel, you should see it as essentially someone from your own community. Not that you should only be giving to people from Israel. You should be giving like sort of to both people from your community, people from Israel. But if they're not coming from Israel, if they're coming from another community, listen. If their case resonates with you and you think it's beautiful, you think it's amazing, by all means, feel free to give them. But you certainly should not feel obligated if they're coming from New York or Florida or wherever. Uh, okay, I hope I answered that question. Um, a very interesting question. So, like, where does tzedakah end and where does good cause begin? And somebody comes forward and they say they're collecting for their Jewish school's basketball team. So is that called tzedakah? Now, by the way, if they say that our school has made an educational decision that's extremely important for their holistic, experience of the students, that they have basketball, and the school administration feels that if there's not basketball or whatever extracurricular thing, it will take away from the kids' broad school experience. Is that reasonable? I think that's reasonable. Is that equivalent to other needs? Probably not equivalent to other needs. Um, yeah, honestly, for all this, I go back to what I said to you before, that I think you should see yourself as God's shliach in distributing the money, and He's giving you the money for a reason. Maybe you believe very much in the cause. If you believe very much in the cause, there's a children's group that does pleasant Shabbos afternoon activities for kids in the community. Is there value to that? I think there's a big value to that. Is that wasted money? No way is that wasted money. As long as you feel that the programming is good, that's definitely not wasted money. Where does that rank compared to other things? I would tell you to think about it, in your own viewpoint, in your own perspective. Um, Really, really interesting. Does a person need to give tzedakah to the school/yeshiva that supported their children? You sent all of your kids to such and such a school, and now they're calling, and you sent your kids. Maybe you yourself went to that school. Do you have an obligation to give that school? So, obligation, I would not say obligation. Um, is there something to be said for hakaras hatov? Is there something to be said from a midos perspective of gratitude to the school, that you or your family, you yourself, have benefited so much from the school? It makes sense to prioritize them in your giving, particularly if it fits into our principles mentioned before. If it doesn't fit into our principles mentioned before, if it's a local school, it certainly makes sense. It makes sense for you to be supporting the local school, even if you don't have any kids at school. I just want to say, I want to go a little bit off script for a moment. I really, really think this is important. There are so many important causes within our community. Um, I really think that there is a great financial burden on the schools and on the parents to meet the tuition needs. Most of the parents of our community are not able, thank God, with multiple children in the day schools, are not able to pay full tuition for all of their children. And these are people working hard. The schools try their best to be of assistance to the families and give scholarships. Um, I really think if a person does not have children that they're supporting through school right now, whether day school, whether beyond, and they have available charity dollars, I really think it's important to be considering, even if your children are not in school anymore or not yet in school, I really think it's important to be considering helping schools in the area. And maybe it's uniquely meaningful if you yourself, if your family benefited from a given school. I would definitely say that's true. And I would say that if you went to school out of our community, and that school, or your children went to that school, and they send you something every year, I think it does make sense to be sending something, as sakara satov, as gratitude. I think that makes sense. But an obligation, not an obligation. Um, So on a similar note, someone posed a question. Let's say you have personal gratitude to a school. Maybe you went there, maybe your kids went there, and you don't think they use their funds very wisely. So where is their obligation? So again, I would say not obligated for sure. Um, I mean, it depends how unwisely they're using their funds, but again, you're not obligated in the first place. On some level, Hakara Satov would probably, on a midos level, would probably dictate gratitude, that you give something. If you feel like they're utterly wasting their money, then I don't know if it makes sense to give them anything. If you feel like they could probably do a better job, then maybe give them something and not as much as you could give them. Maybe that makes sense. But again, I repeat, I don't see any of this as an obligation. In terms of Hilchos Tzedakah, I see this more as something to think about in terms of uh, personal midos and character and gratitude. Okay, we're going to kind of shift shift gears here. Also, I hope you don't mind that I do this. I think this is important as well. Um, I just want to say I have a little bit more of an inside look on one particular institution close to my heart. I happen to be sitting there right now in one of the offices of the institution. And I'll tell you, I thank God our shul has been around for a very long time. Thank God. Thank God our shul has, a large membership. Thank God. But I'll tell you, our shul has very, very significant expenses. And I'm sure every institution in the community can say that, but I'll tell you, our shul can definitely say that as well. And uh, if you feel Baruch Hashem, if you feel that our shul is an important institution in the community, and how many of you feel you benefit from the shul, I would encourage you to remember us in your donations as well. Okay, that was the sponsored message. Back to the questions. Um, okay. Thanks, Menashe. Okay, it's in the chat. Thank you very much. Now, this has to do no more with like Meiser calculations. Um, may one give tzedakah before taxes? I'm a little bit unsure of what exactly the person means. I'm going to answer what I think the person was asking, but if I'm misunderstanding, please clarify in the chat. And that is when people figure out maaser, a tenth. Is it a tenth of income before taxes or after taxes? So the standard approach from halakha authorities is it's a tenth of income after taxes. There's much more intricacies, but I just want to answer the question and kind of keep on moving. But that's an important question. Okay, really interesting question. Okay, you have a Meiser fund, and you decided that you're going to give tzedakah to your favorite local shul on Arcola Avenue, and you go online, and then you're just doing it as a donation, and there's a thing that if you'd like to contribute the charge for the credit card, you're welcome to contribute the charge for the credit card. So may I take that from Meiser? I want to make $100 donation to an institution. And now the little message, I'm going to pay by credit card. And the little message comes up and says, if you want, you can cover the credit card fees, and that's, $103.18 or whatever it is. Can I take the $3.18 from Meiser? So the answer is absolutely, because this is a cost of doing business. If you don't cover the $3.18, the institution is going to have to cover the $3.18. So that's just another way of helping the institution's finances. So that is fine. I want to clarify something. Nobody asked this, but I just want to be very clear about this. If I have money that I'm obligated in, that I obligated myself before I had in mind I was going to cover Meiser expenses with it, then the basic halacha is I can't use Meiser money for it. So that's very important to keep in mind. So if I obligated myself, not if every time I make a donation I take it from Meiser, then it's understood internally for me that every time I make a pledge, it's from Meiser. But let's say I don't want to get into details of how this could work otherwise. But let's say I said, you know what, I'm going to give $100. I'm going to donate $100 for this, and I didn't have in mind Meiser. I didn't even think it fit as tzedakah. And I say I'm going to pay $100, and then I find out later after I obligated myself that could fit as tzedakah. I can't attribute it to Meiser after the fact. If I was already obligated, if I already pledged it, I can't only after the fact say, oh, that's going to come from Meiser. But for example, let's say I'll give you one. Let's say I have to pay tuition to a given school. And I'm not going to get into this whether Meiser or not Meiser. It's really a complicated discussion that nobody asked about. Let's say I'm going to pay tuition to a given school, and I owe $2,000, and I go online to pay my $2,000 payment, and they say, oh, by the way, if you want to pay, if you want to cover the credit card fee, we'd really appreciate it. I'm not obligated to cover the credit card fee. They're willing to cover the credit card fee. They're just asking me if I'm game. So if at that point I say, sure, I'll cover the credit card fee, but I view that as a donation. So I could take that credit card fee from Meiser. I hope that made sense. Okay, if a person buys something that's advertised as having 50% of the proceeds going to tzedakah, may one count it as tzedakah for the full amount that was paid for the item? Okay, really, really important. Local institution says that they're going to sell T-shirts that have their logo on it. This is not a shameless plug, by the way. That they're going to sell T-shirts that have their logo on it. You pay $30 for the T-shirt, and $15 goes to the institution. The shirt it costs $15, and $15 goes to the institution. So how much can I take from Meiser? So I would say as follows. The first question is this shirt worth anything to me? I mean, am I ever going to use this shirt? If actually this shirt is worth something to me, and I could always use another T-shirt, and actually $15 is I could pay 15. I could totally pay $15 for a T-shirt, and they tell me that's the value of the T-shirt. It's $15. I could totally pay $15 for a T-shirt. Then the $15 should not be coming from Meiser. The value of the shirt should not be coming from Meiser. What's beyond the value of the shirt that the institution is saying that's going to go to our coffers, of course I could take that from Meiser. It gets a little more complicated if I come and I say, there's no way in the world I'd be buying a shirt. I have no interest in a T-shirt. This might surprise you. I don't wear T-shirts often. I know that shocks you all. I have no interest in a T-shirt. So can I give $30 to Meiser because the institution's charging me $30? Well, here's the thing. The institution is only benefiting $15 from my donation. If I have no interest in the T-shirt, I'm probably better off just donating $30 to the institution and not buying the shirt. If I buy the shirt, the institution's not even benefiting my first $15. I hope that's making sense. There are situations, there's a big question about this with dinners. There are situations where the institution fundamentally benefits from my being there. That becomes a little bit of an interesting question. The simple answer for this, by the way, is it would follow the same rules the IRS does for this example. In other words, like frequently, like an institution will say $75 is the cash value of a seat at our dinner or something, $125, whatever it is, and everything beyond that you can deduct as a charitable donation. The simple answer is we would follow a similar model for Meiser. But there could be more complicated shilohs. You could ask a shiloh about specific details of that case. Does giving away food count as Meiser money? Really good question. Really, really good question. If I'm going to put it in the garbage, it doesn't really count as Meiser money. It counts as charity. I mean, it counts as a chesed, but I don't think it counts as Meiser money. I don't think so. Honest to goodness, if I walk into Ben Yehuda Pizza and I buy a pizza and it cost me, forgive me for not remembering how much it costs. It cost me $28. I don't know. It cost me $28, and I walk out of Ben Yehuda Pizza and I see a family that looks like they're starving, and I hand them the pizza here, this is a gift from me, then of course I could take that from my sir. That for me, that's $28 that I could have given them a check or I could hand them a pizza. But if it's something that I'm not, it's not like I'm going to use it anyway, or even if I am going to use it, I can use it as miser if it's worth that amount to me, if that makes sense. If it's not worth that amount to me in the moment, I wouldn't take it from miser. Does inviting Shabbos guests who have nowhere else to go, is that considered tzedakah? Really, really interesting. So let's manifest it in two questions. So one question is, a person is heaven for, unfortunately, financially strapped, and it's difficult for them to cover their expenses, even if they would have a Shabbos meal. But the point is, my gosh, I'm looking at these people. I think if they're home for Shabbos lunch, I think they're gonna have a very difficult time buying groceries for school lunches this week. So if I don't have to tell them that's why I'm inviting them. If I invite them and in my mind it's tzedakah, then it's absolutely reasonable that the cash value of what I feel I provided for them at lunch, it's absolutely reasonable to take that from my sir. There's a person that I'm really inviting as a chesed, but I say to myself, I mean, it costs money to have people at my table. If I say to myself that I'm putting out extra money and I can even monetize it. I have in my mind that guests at my table, it's $10 per guest, whatever. And I'm inviting the person as a chesed, not because, I mean, I hopefully will enjoy their company, but my motivation is because they shouldn't be sitting alone. I would say you could take that from my some money. I would say if there was an organization that raised money for that, I would say that's great. But this is not they're my good friend and I invite them because I enjoy their company. That's great. That's very appropriate. This is you don't have to tell them why you're inviting them. But this is I'm inviting them because they shouldn't be alone. Um yeah. Um okay, really interesting. Um, does a secular charity, can I give Meister funds to a secular charity? Um, I think it depends what it is. I think it's reasonable to give Meiser to a situation that I believe that Jews will also benefit. So, for example, let's say there's a medical, let's say there's a research fund to research ways to cure cancer. I think non-Jews will benefit from that. I think Jews will benefit. I think a lot of people will benefit from that. Again, I don't think we should put that on the same tier as exclusively Jewish causes, but I think it's reasonable to take that from my money. I think so. But if it's something that's really for like that, I don't think Jews will be benefiting from it, um, or I don't, then I wouldn't. And even if I do think Jews will benefit, I wouldn't give that as one of my primary Meiser things. Um, What's the story with giving money to non-Jewish people or presumably non-Jewish people at the court are asking for money? What's the story? So there's a really interesting halacha in the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about an idea of Ava. Ava is that if non-Jewish people see that I'm giving money to Jews and then I walk right by them, it'll arouse enmity and it won't be good. So we have an idea that we're supposed to also give to non-Jews if we're giving to Jews. Now that does not mean that I'm sitting at home and I go online and I donate to this cause and this cause and this person and that person. And so now I'm walking by and there's a non-Jew. It does not mean that, well, I give money to other people, so I should give to them. What Dad's talking about is like I'm walking by. Imagine I'm walking out of shul and I see a Jew standing there, and I give him a few dollars. I see a non-Jew standing there, I walk right by. That's not right. That's not good, and that's discouraged in halacha. Um, the normal approach, though, is that money would not come from Meiser. So if I give to Jews, I should also give to non-Jews if they're right there. but that money should not come from Meiser. Meiser is really about my obligation, my responsibility for other Jews. Now, it is a good idea. It's not an obligation, but it is a good idea. Just we need to be trying to make a Kiddush Hashem in this world. It is a good idea. I'm walking by a person sitting at the corner. It is a good idea to give a person sitting at the corner. Whether or not I gave to a Jew down, do I have to give to every person? I don't have to give to every Jew. I certainly don't have to give to every person sitting at a corner. But is it a good practice to also give to those people? Yes, it certainly is a good practice, and it seems to be a good idea. This halacha, we mentioned it before, that on Purim, every person who asks for money, we should be giving them. Is that true for non-Jews? Also, the basic halacha seems to be it's not true for non-Jews. So in other words, so now, if I don't know if the person's a Jew or not, it probably makes sense on Purim to give them just a little bit. If it's clear to me that the person's not a Jew, I'm not obligated to give them. Okay. So really good halacha to know. There is a unique halacha in Tzedakah that if I say I'm going to give money, even if I don't vow I'm going to give money, if I just say, you could count on me for whatever, I make a pledge, you could count on me for whatever. If I don't specifically say I'm doing this bli neder, I really halachically am obligated to do it. It's actually not really between me and the institution. It's really between me and Hashem. It really has status like a vow. If I say I'm going to give an institution, if I specifically stipulate it's bli neder, I don't have an obligation. But if I say I'm going to give, I have an obligation. And if I come to a clear decision in my mind, I'm going to give $50 when they whatever. If I come to that clear decision in my mind, even if I didn't say it, we say I have an obligation. Now, if I think about, I wonder what's good, I wonder what works, that is that's different. Like maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about I say, they're going to ask for. I'm sitting in shul, and they're going to ask for call out appeals. And this is what I'm going to give. I'm going to give $75 when they make a call out appeal. I'll tell you we spent Pesach with family out of town, and my wonderful brother-in-law is the president of the shul. So I said to myself, and I saw they were making an appeal, like that you called out donations. I said, this is basically, I've got a hakar satov to my wonderful hosts. I'm definitely going to give him the appeal. And I thought to myself, what's a good amount for the appeal? So I said, X is a good amount to be giving in the appeal. And then they started calling out numbers. And to be honest with you, that was significantly more than other people were giving. I'm not so used to being such a heavy roller. But the truth is, the fact that I really decided that's what I was going to give, really halachically, I was obligated to give it. I hope that example is making sense to people. It wasn't like I was thinking maybe this, maybe that. I really decided this is what I'm going to give. So I was obligated to do it. And the obligation is not only to give, it's the obligation is in the amount that I either commit to or that I get into in my mind. At Yizkor, there's specific mention at Yizkor. Somebody asked about this, that in the text of Yizkor, it talks about that we're giving tzedakah, that we will give tzedakah. It's however you have in mind. In other words, some people maybe give tzedakah right before Yom Tov, that they have in mind that that's for Yizkor. Some people at Yizkor, they say, I'm going to give tzedakah, and then they have in mind they're going to, write a check or go online after Yom Tov. Either way, whatever is their plan. But if they have in mind, I'm going to give X, then that's like what we're talking about. Then they really should be giving X. But if they just say, I don't know, I'll figure it out after Yom Tov, then whatever it is, they'll figure it out after Yom Tov. Okay. That is the list of submitted questions. These are really great questions. Um, I hope if you submitted a question, I answered it. Um, okay. Okay, let's see. I need to start at the top here. Um, okay, thank you for sharing that, Ariel. I'm not going to comment one way or the other. Thank you. Great question. Thank you, Alan. Really good question. A person is a musician and he goes to Jewish senior communities and Jewish senior community centers, and they are ready to pay 125 to 150 dollars as an entertainer, and they're ready to pay it to you, and you say no, I don't, no need to, um, and you waive the fee. Now you have to know that they're ready to pay it to you. And I'm not saying you, heaven forbid, you. I'm sure they're ready to pay triple that amount, but another person, if you just come out immediately and say, no need to pay me, like when they book you, no need to pay me, maybe maybe they weren't going to pay, but if you know that they're ready to pay you, you could certainly, if you waive the fee, you could certainly consider that a Meiser donation of that amount. You consider that amount a Meiser donation of that amount to the Jewish Community Center. Yeah, great example. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, hold on. Super important. Super important. Thank you for raising that question. Financial assistance to one's adult children to meet the needs of their household. Um, if you feel that's, and as the questioner even cites the phrase, as we've used before, de soro, to meet the financial needs, it, if you feel, here's the metric. If somebody came to you and said, I know somebody who has such and such a need, not that it's your kid, would you, if you had all the money in the world, would you say to yourself, they're collecting money for that? Are you kidding? If you would say that to yourself, unless you feel that, your family's needs are very unique, and again, the day Soro, then you shouldn't be taking Meiser for it. But if you feel like, if you didn't even know who the person was, they came and they said, this family, they really have to, gather their pennies to pay for an extracurricular activity for the kids. You know, uh, there's something that music lessons, and it's really good for the kid, and they just can't afford it. My guess is, objectively, if you believe the person's assessment that they can't afford it, you would say, wow, yeah, that's if it's really great. They love to take their kids out for pizza once a week. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I'm not sure I would say that fits the Tzedakah. Maybe, I don't know. Um, but I hope I answered your question. But yes, you can definitely do that. Yes. Um, okay, shul dues is a super question. Here's the deal. It gets a little bit complicated. If I make a donation to an institution that is appropriately befitting of charity, and I have financial benefit from the donation, then I should I should take the shul dues from Meiser, but I should deduct the amount that I had financial benefit from. So let me give a theoretical example. Okay, let's let's say um, let's say and forgive me for not having the numbers more clearly in my head. Um, let's say I decide uh, a shul comes out and they say we have a special membership level in our shul, and I'm just going to do round numbers again. Forgive me for not knowing. If somebody gives $3,600, they're going to get 2 complimentary tickets to the shul dinner. Let's say. So let's think that through. So is it reasonable to say $3,600 should come from Meiser? Yes, it's reasonable to say $3,600 should come from Meiser. But now, let's say 2 tickets to the shul dinner is a cash value of $500. Okay, now, if you did not get complimentary 2 tickets, we already said that you could treat your donation for the shul dinner the same way the IRS would. So let's say the shul says $125 cash value for each seat, $75 deductible. $75 is deductible, let's just say. So that meant that if you get 2 complimentary seats at the dinner, and you're going to use them, by the way, you're going to come, you're going to benefit. So then $250, you have a $250 non-Meiser benefit from your special membership level. So if your special membership level was $3,600, but $250 are a benefit that's a non-Meiser benefit, then I would say you should only be taking $3,350 from Meiser, and so on and so forth. That was a very complicated example. I hope I answered your question. Shul dues, to be a little bit simpler, let's say, just for round numbers, a person pays $1,000 in shul dues. Basically, shul dues, I would say, could be taken from Meiser money. But again, if there are concrete financial benefits to the fact that a person's a shul member, there's an event that a person's going to go to, there's a service that a person's going to partake of, and they benefit from it, and now that service is $25 less, $50 less because they're a shul member, they should deduct that from their Meiser cheshbon. So if a person said, so it's $1,000 from Meiser, but then they had an actual $50 cash benefit from being a shul member, then they should only take $950 from Meiser. I hope that made sense. Yizkor plaques, I think you can take all of Yizkor plaque from Meiser. I think that's fine. What you're really doing is you're making a donation in a person's memory. I think that's fine. Kiddush group is really interesting. I'm not so sure about taking Kiddush group from Meiser. If it sort of depends a little bit on how you're viewing it, to be honest with you. So let's say you are a regular participant in Kiddush X, and thank God you benefit a lot from the Kiddush, and you feel like it's not right. I'm noshing every week at this stuff. I should chip in because I'm benefiting. Other people are paying. I should chip in too. And like you say to yourself, this is like this amount that I chip in annually. That's like it's sort of comparable to the amount that I'm benefiting in terms of what I'm eating at the Kiddush. So if that's how you feel, then I'm not so sure you should be taking that from Meiser. It's very nice to be separate, to be participating, but I'm not sure it makes sense to take that from Meiser. If your generosity far exceeds whatever the cash value is of what you're eating, or you don't even go to Kiddush, you just think it's so nice they should have a Kiddush and things like that, then that certainly makes sense to be taking it from Meiser. I hope that made a little bit of sense. Happy to discuss specifics with anybody offline. I see there are some more chats that came in. Yeah, Gene, I would say yeah. It's an interesting question, but thank you. Really interesting. Really interesting. This is probably a judgment call. Marion asked a really interesting question. I would say if you feel that the political action group or advocate group or whatever it is its core mission is to advocate for what you see as a vital Jewish need, I would say it'd be reasonable to take my some money from that. I'll be honest with you. If it's an organization that like sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes you feel they're talking about something, and please nobody make any comments, please. Sometimes you feel they're talking about something that's not even in step with what you see as Jewish values. I'd be wary to take my some money from that. Maybe it makes sense to support the organization. That's your own decision, but I'd be wary to take my some money from that. I'm just going to say a specific organization positively. If a person wanted to make a contribution to an organization like APAC, again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I think APAC is, I'm sure APAC's not perfect, but I think APAC is fighting. I think APAC's fighting the good fight. If someone wants to know, could they take my some money from APAC? From towards APAC, I would say it'd be reasonable. I would say reasonable. Please don't start asking me organizations because I would feel very bad if I specifically said one in a negative way. Um, Really interesting question. Okay, you're bidding on Simchas Torah. You're bidding on whatever for Simchas Torah, and you don't win. So does that mean you're obligated to make the donation? So if it's at younger so Shomrai Emunah, the answer is yes. No, that was a joke. It's very much understood when you're bidding on something. It's very much understood. It's clearly the intent. I- If I get it, I will give X. If I get it, I will give X. Um, if I win, I will give X. I think it's understood. That's a really neat question that somebody posed, but I don't think you're obligated in that case if you don't win. Um, yeah. Mincha's in just a few minutes, but if anybody has any questions they would like to call out that maybe they weren't able to put it in the chat, this is your time. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hope I'm sure I was less than clear at times with this. I apologize if it wasn't so clear. Um, I hope this was a little bit helpful. But if people benefited from the discussion, it was really very much thanks to the great questions that people submitted. Um, uh, Miriam already suggested a good topic. I think we did it. I think Miriam's right. I think we did a while back, but I think it always is good to revisit. Maybe we'll see if we do it next, or if somebody comes up with some other suggestion. You're always welcome to submit suggestions to me or Miriam. Um, Aspects of halachos involving aspects of davening. People ask questions all the time about that stuff. Um, yes, I think that's a good topic. Maybe we'll get it in, before the Yom Tov season. Maybe not. We'll have to see how the dates work out. But we're always all ears. By the way, just to give it as an example, Miriam was right. I'd forgotten we did this years ago, Tzedakah. But I hope you'll agree with me that it was worth doing again. Um, and if you don't think it was worth doing again, I don't know why you spent the last hour with me. Shame on you. But sometimes some topics are good to revisit. But I was certainly always interested in new things as well. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. We should be Zocha to always. We should be Zocha. Yes, this is recorded. Thank you, Menashe, for recording it. And Mitzvah a link will be posted. We should be Zocha to always be on the giving end. We should be Zocha to Hashem should bless us with clarity. It's a great thing. When you think about it, it's this great fusion of Ben Adam LaChaver and Ben Adam LaMakom. Every time we give tzedakah, it's really a statement of our emunah, that we feel that God blessed us with success and he wants us to do something with it. And it's very much an opportunity to really connect. And of course, the way we give tzedakah is very meaningful, the way we interact with people. But for me at least, this idea that we should see ourselves as God's emissaries and give to ideas and causes and people who resonates most with us, I personally find that very meaningful.